See, it looks good.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. It's Dr. Julio.
Hi, everyone. It's Danielle. Let me just check the video here. You can start with something. I'm just checking system.
Okay.
Here.
So we are doing a live feed, and hopefully everybody can see us. We're just checking right now.
I'm just sharing the video.
And we can share.
If you guys share the video, we're going to do a drawing, or not a drawing, kind of like a raffle. What do you want to call it?
Either way. Anyway, we're going to Tribeca Film Festival this weekend and to see a movie about medical devices, and it's called, I can't remember the name of the movie right now. Somebody text in if they remember it.
I honestly don't
I think it's The Bleeding Edge. I think that's what it's called.
Cutting Edge, no?
I think it's The Bleeding Edge, but...
It's something edge.
Yeah. So anyway, because it was short notice and we were invited to go see the premiere, it is a Netflix documentary, which is excellent because I love Netflix. And they're talking about as one of the devices that are, for medical devices that they're worried about or have problems with is Essure. So we're going to Tribeca Film Festival, and because of that, Danielle had gotten tickets for me for
Your
the
birthday?
15th. Yep, for my birthday, for the 15th anniversary of the Freestyle Explosion. And I love freestyle, so a lot of you know that I like to freestyle dance. So in any event, we are not going to be able to go to that event because it's on Saturday night, and we'll already be traveling to Baltimore on Saturday. So the tickets are floor seats, and so we're willing to give them away for a raffle, and we thought the best way to do that is that after you see this presentation, that if you take the time to Facebook like us or make a comment on Google under Julio Novoa MD or drnovoa.com on Google, we'll be glad to include you in a raffle to see who gets those floor tickets for the Freestyle Explosion on Saturday. Of course, it is a local event, so unless you're willing to travel, we prefer to give it to someone that's going to be here in El Paso. But you can do what you want with the tickets if you win the raffle. So keep sharing the presentation, and we'll see where we go from there.
I'm trying to share it to your drnovoa.com page, but I think you're the one who has to do that. Since
Okay, well, we're not going to be able to do that. Just checking, doing a mic check. Can
you guys hear us?
Can you hear us okay, or is it too loud? Because we can adjust the mics.
So if they share the video, they can win tickets to that event then?
Yes.
Okay. So if you guys share this video, it'll put you in a drawing, so we can, we'll probably pick the person tomorrow, because tomorrow is Wednesday, the event's on Saturday. We want to give you enough time to make plans if you have to, find a babysitter or something. So, if you share the video today, also, not only if you share the video, but if you share our video, if you rate us on Google and like us on Facebook, that'll give you extra, it'll put your name into the drawing extra times. That way you have a higher chance of winning. Sorry guys, I'm just checking something here really quick. Okay.
Can you see the messages, the comments?
Right here.
Mic check. Can you guys hear us okay? We'll see where we'll go from there.
It shouldn't cause any interference.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say it ahead of time because I like to, it's unconscious, but I like to interject often, so I want to give an opportunity for Danielle to speak.
He's a video hog.
Yeah, I'm a video hog. So in any event, today's topics are, specifically the first one I want to talk about is the FDA mandate related to the Essure device. I am thankful that the FDA finally, after looking at all of the data, has finally agreed that that the black box warning guidelines, the black box warning guidelines, were not being followed by, from our surveys, close to 95% of the doctors that were putting the Essure device in. So we always knew that this was going to be a problem. Why? And I hate to be cynical about it, but since I'm an OBGYN doctor, I'm going to give it to you straight. Okay, as I keep telling people over and over and over again, doctors are no different than anyone else. We are humans, we have businesses to run, and for many of us, the medical aspect of our profession is secondary to the business aspect of our profession. And for many of us, we have God complexes. And so we really, really hate it when a patient knows more about a particular subject than we do. Or we get very, very irritated when a patient has gone to Google or done a online search and has been able to get information that we should have already known about. So we dismiss that information for the majority of our patients. And this is the one of the quandaries that most Essure patients are facing, because we as GYN doctors took it for granted that the information we were getting from the FDA and what we were getting from Bayer was accurate information. And in reality, it wasn't. It was based on shoddy data. It was based on limited amount of information. It was based on clinical and pivotal studies that did not follow through on patient care to a significant number of years. And yet we stood to make an incredible amount of money by placing these devices. So when you're trying to look at the altruistic point related to the Essure, that takes, it's not as great as compared to the amount of money they were making. And so here are doctors making a lot of money placing the Essure device. They're not really taking the time to look at what are the results and the complications and dismissing those complications. And then still ignoring the data as it's coming in. So now we know that based on studies from Cornell, from Yale, from the most recent one, from the French study, we now know that that the Essure device is not 99% effective. It is actually much less effective than traditional tubal ligation. It is associated with device-induced abortions, or what I call Essure-induced abortions. It causes spontaneous miscarriage. It causes preterm delivery, stillborn births, and the MAUD data shows more than 400 associated cases. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, because you have to remember that most patients don't know to put information into the MAUD data or to complain. And so this is what we were facing. And shout out to the Essure Problems Forum and all of the other social forums, because they're the ones that really were the advocates for patients, because they were the ones that were taking it personally because it did involve them. And so they brought these messages to the FDA, and the FDA did take the time in 2015 to have a scientific evaluation of it. It took longer than a day, and more than a dozen specialists were involved in making recommendations, and specialties across multiple fields of medicine. And so that's where the black box warning came out of, and Bayer agreed to the black box warning. Lo and behold, we knew, just like every other black box warning, that the majority of doctors were going to ignore it. And that's exactly what happened. So here we go, facing issues of patients, the FDA's mandates being, the FDA guidelines being ignored for more than a year, and women suffering, women not getting informed consent, basically incredible medical liability, failure to follow the standard of care, medical battery in some cases. And this was completely ignored by the majority of organizations associated with OBGYN. So the members of the Essure Problems Forum went to Washington, D.C. and spoke to the FDA commissioner aired their grievances, and lo and behold, a short time later, now the FDA Black Box Warning is mandated. That means that the Bayer Corporation is civilly and criminally liable for not policing its doctors. And doctors, and I keep telling doctors, be careful, because you are now on the hook for doing what's right. You have to properly inform your patients and stop dismissing this. Here's where we run into the problem with the ACOG. And I wanted to say it slowly, and I wanted to say it succinctly. The primary priority of the ACOG, or the American Congress of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, or American College, if you want to call it that. The primary priority of the ACOG is for the financial stability and enhancement of its members' medical practices. The promotion of safe and effective medical protocols are secondary, especially when there is a conflict which may jeopardize the financial gain of the individual ACOG members, or if conflicts exist among the consensus of practicing members. Even if doing the right, following the right protocols serves the better interest and the welfare of the medical community and women's health care in general. So basically, what it means, what I'm saying, is that the ACOG is out to appease its members. And a secondary goal, mind you, is for proper medical health care for women, okay? Whenever there has been, in a significant number of cases, when ACOG has been challenged to do the right thing, whether it be related to the incredibly high cesarean section rate, which we still know is at least 50% of all C-sections are unnecessary, ACOG says nothing about that, or does nothing about it to police its members, because it's not a policing organization, okay? It literally eviscerated the VBAC consensus in the 1980s. 1 in 4 patients was being delivered by previous cesarean section was being delivered vaginally as a VBAC, or vaginal birth after cesarean section. Then the ACOG came out with its guidelines in the 1990s, and basically it went from 25% to less than 1%, and that's still what's going on today, even though ACOG went ahead and changed its regulation or recommendations, and now is encouraging patients to try for the VBAC. Okay, it's not doing anything about the vaginal meshes, or enough about the vaginal meshes. And here you go with this point of fact related to the Essure device. So I wanted to make a comment, if I have this page here, related to exactly what did ACOG say about the FDA mandated comments. And so it states here, ACOG recognizes the importance of permanent contraception to women and their families, including access to a full range of comprehensive choices. While ACOG supports measures that help improve decision-making by patients and physicians, we are concerned the FDA's new mandate may impede physicians from making certain options available and leaving women with fewer contraceptive choices. Further, information provided to patients must be evidence-based and accurate, and not mislead patients or interfere with informed decision-making. ACOG believes that the patient decision checklist brochure required by the FDA does not meet these requirements due to its broad scope and detailed scripts. Basically, that's a bunch of BS. Okay, that ACOG has had informed information, evidence-based information that came from the FDA. So, are you telling me, ACOG, that it was okay that you accepted the FDA's information to put the Essure device on the market, but now you're disagreeing with a committee that sat down for more than a year to study Essure, and based on evidence-based information that they had, you come up and say, we don't agree with that, and we don't want to support that. Well, you know what? I know what's behind this. What's behind this is that ACOG doesn't like, or its members don't like to be told what to do, and basically have been doing, or trying to do what they did last year, is ignore the guidelines, which I'm telling you, this is why women, all women, not just Essure women, but all women, must say this is enough. Enough is enough. Yes, you're my doctor, but I expect you to tell me exactly what's going on and give me the correct information, and stop putting your 2 cents in when there's enough information out there that's evidence-based. So to me, this is a bunch of BS because ACOG knows better. That patient decision checklist is based on a significant amount of accurate information. And that is why ACOG doctors, ACOG members are now mandated and obligated to follow the guidelines, because if you can see that they still have the audacity to send out a message like this and post something like this, you know darn well what was happening last year. That's why 95% of patients weren't being told anything, because their doctors, based on the doctor's discretion, that they didn't want to share this information. Well, now you know what? We're getting into the pockets of these doctors, and we need to get on the medical boards and the FDA to police these doctors and to police ACOG, for God's sakes, because this is an embarrassment for ACOG to have sent something out like this, because there's a bunch of hypocrisy based on everything else that they've ever had related to when it comes to something to do with money or something to do against the consensus of the other members. Okay, we have evidence-based information with the Essure, and that's why these guidelines have to be followed as mandated information now. So that's my I just blew my top on that, and I apologize, but I see every single day dozens of messages, emails from women that are suffering, not just in the United States, but across the world related to Essure. And what's going on here in the United States is just now starting in other countries. Doctors in the United Kingdom, doctors in France, Italy, New Zealand, the Netherlands, they don't know how to manage complications with the Essure. And so it's trial and error, and they're using patients as their guinea pigs because they don't have any guidance, because their societies are ignoring that there's actually a problem. So this is where you need to speak out. You need to put that light, put those doctors under the microscope. You need to comment on their practices on Google, on vitals.com, on healthgrades.com. That's what you need to do, because only then will ACOG finally understand that women will no longer be silent about their health care, and stop pretending like it doesn't matter, because it's extremely important. There are other choices. There's the traditional tubal ligation, which has been shown to be very safe and effective, and other not forms of permanent birth control, but very safe and effective temporary birth control, especially for the women that were unsure about permanent sterilization, and that's been taken away from them, not only their fallopian tubes, but their uteruses as well. So that's my comment so far. I've taken a lot of time, so I'm going to let Danielle talk now.
Well, actually, I think we should open up the video for anyone who has any questions, because I know a lot of you are probably having, issues, might want to, ask Dr. Novoa a few questions regarding the Essure. I know a lot of you shared the video to a few Essure pages, so we appreciate that. So we'll actually be taking questions now. If you guys have any questions, I'll be reading them off to Dr. Novoa from the live feed, okay? Crystal Dangle says, does ACOG have skin in the game with Essure? I'm not getting why they would write this letter.
Okay. ACOG, which includes 58,000 members, has the membership pays dues to the ACOG. Okay. ACOG is situated in Washington, D.C. And so whenever there is a financial issue that affects its members, ACOG gets involved. Okay, when it has to do with cesarean sections, ACOG got involved. Even though it knows that 50% of cesarean sections are unnecessary, it tries to cover and explain things that listen, it needs to be left up to the doctor and the patient. Okay, they're dismissing the problem. Okay, so when it had to do with the vaginal meshes and the urethral meshes, it said, well, it's still effective in a small portion of women, because so much money was spent on placing these devices in patients, and also to cover its members for the liability related to it. When we're talking about Essure, a lot of ACOG members put Essure devices in. And so of course they're going to try to help out their members. They're going to say, you know what, it was justified in a certain percentage of patients, and therefore we need to protect our members. And that's the skin. If you're asking what the skin is, that's what we're talking about. It's not only ACOG, it's Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood gets funding by placing Essure devices because it gets paid for those devices when it's done in an office setting. Not in a hospital setting. So Planned Parenthood has money to be made in the ACOG game, in the Essure game, as does ACOG through its members. Although it's a nonprofit, ACOG has a specific interest in making sure that its members are happy, and this is what we're talking about in this particular situation.
Christy K says, I haven't had any problems with Essure so far. When I consulted with the doctor, she said it's okay for not removing. How do I go about getting it removed?
Okay, although I'm stressing the problems with Essure, not everyone has a problem with Essure. Okay, 70% of patients are okay with the Essure device in. It's the 30% of the patients that have Essure devices placed that have some really, really catastrophic problems with it. And so we don't want to make every patient feel like they have to rush to their doctor's office and have the Essure device removed. We just want patients to be aware, if you start noticing problems with it, that you should contact your doctor, or at least an open-minded doctor, about the possibility of long-term side effects. Migration, the device does migrate. Failure of the device leading to unwanted pregnancy, miscarriages, and of course the autoimmune reactions that are similar to lupus or other autoimmune conditions that lead to cognitive changes, chronic headaches, hair loss, dental caries, loss of teeth, excessive weight gain, the e-belly, chronic fatigue syndrome. We're looking at systemic nickel allergy syndrome.
So I have a question. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
you. So what if they are not experiencing problems but want it removed before they experience these problems, because some of these problems, from what I know from these patients, can lead to permanent issues?
That would be an elective procedure, and this is where it gets more complicated for patients when they want something removed because they're afraid. And I can appreciate that. I can't even imagine having a device in my body that could be a potentially ticking time bomb to my health in the future. And so, yes, there are doctors that will electively remove the device because they understand that if a patient didn't know what she was getting herself into by having the device placed, then she would like the device removed, then there are doctors that are willing to do that. Of course, it probably will not be covered by insurance, but there are doctors that are willing to remove the Essure as a prophylactic management.
Michelle Ross, pretty much a question that all Essure women want to know is, when will Essure finally be pulled up from the market? It actually has been pulled from the market in other countries, right?
That's correct. As a commercial endeavor, the Essure device has been removed from every other country except the United States as far as the sale and marketing of the product. The last hurdle is here in the United States, in part because it has protection from liability, even though Bayer is spending has spent close to $1 billion trying to defend the product. And the last stronghold is here in the United States, and partly because of stuff like this, stuff from the ACOG, where doctors feel like, you know what, I can ignore this. I don't have to tell patients what's going on. I can dismiss it because I know better than the patient does. And in reality, they haven't been looking at any information that's really available related to the Essure device. So what I do believe is that being mandated, now that you absolutely have to get a signature, and if you don't, it's below the standard of care. You can be reported to your state medical board. You can have civil liabilities related to it. A significant number of doctors that were placing the Essure are probably going to pull the Essure and stop placing them. So here is the final hurdle, and how you have to get them to finally stop is to put the light on those doctors that are still placing the Essure device. Make sure that everybody knows that they're placing it, and that every patient has been properly informed, and then when there is a complication, that the patient has been heard by their doctor and has a reasonable explanation as to why that doctor is managing the patient the way that they're managing them.
So this is a little bit off subject, but we've had a few patients asking, I'm guessing they've had tubal ligations and they want to know how they would go about getting a reversal. Yes, so I've had a few questions come in regarding that. If there's anyone here locally in El Paso that does reversals, or what would their options be regarding that? It's a little off topic, but you guys can ask any questions, and not just Essure related. Any GYN questions you have, OB questions you have, you can go ahead and ask us.
Yeah, reversal of Essure is a very, very complicated, delicate operation where there's only a handful of experts here in the United States that actually have documented excellent outcomes with them. One of them is Dr. Charles Monteith in North Carolina out of Chapel Hill. And so I recommend that you Google his name. If he can't help you, he probably will have some recommendations of the doctors that specialize in that for the particular tubal reversal. Now, as far as tubal removal with the Essure, that's also a complicated procedure, and you have to look out the problems related to the fragmentation issue, leaving pieces of the device left behind.
So I'm guessing if they are trying to get pregnant again and they want to do something here locally, what would be the recommendation?
IVF therapy, Dr. Noble, there's a couple.
There's a new fertility, it's Dr. Noble, and then a new one just came into town. I'm not sure the name, but it's right across from Sarah Medical Center. So if you just Google infertility specialist in El Paso, it'll probably pop up and you have all the listings there of who you can speak to regarding that. I had a question here. Christina wrote in, do you think Essure and endometriosis may be linked?
We do understand. We don't actually understand what the absolute causes of endometriosis are. We do understand that in part it can be caused by inflammatory reactions. And so prior to the closure of the fallopian tube by the Essure device, it's possible that you can have retrograde menstrual flow through the fallopian tubes into the pelvis. Unfortunately, because this occurs in between 10 and 20, sometimes up to 30% of women, we can't really distinguish the differences in Essure-associated endometriosis and just traditional endometriosis cases. So a lot more research needs to be done. I happen to believe that there is a link, but if you're asking me to justify it with data, I have to be honest, I can't tell you that. But for those patients that suffer from endometriosis already, I strongly recommend that they have the Essure device removed, because you have endometriosis, which is an inflammatory reaction, and then you have Essure, which is also an inflammatory reaction, and not only localized and temporary, but it's actually chronic and systemic condition. I would not want to have two conditions where you have an inflammatory reaction of the body, which would be Essure and endometriosis. So I would recommend that for those patients suffering from endometriosis, that part of the protocol should be removal of the Essure device.
Next question is from Yesenia Reyes. When they remove the Essure, does it mean they remove both ovaries?
No. You have to understand that the fallopian tubes are completely separate from the ovaries, and so in the vast majority of patients, you do not remove the ovaries when you remove the Essure. Now, if you have a condition of endometriosis, there is confusion there where some doctors do recommend that you remove the ovaries in cases of endometriosis, but if you're removing just the Essure because of issues with Essure, you can keep your ovaries.
Amber, actually, I'm sorry, Ariama, I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name. Digues, doctor, after my surgeries, my hair is still falling a lot. Will it ever stop falling?
Hair loss, there's a number of reasons why patients will lose their hair, but hair loss, it goes through different cycles, like we see when patients are pregnant. So you have to give it between 3 and 6 months to see whether, after Essure is removed, to see whether or not hair growth has gone back to normal. So I would suggest that you just try to be patient and give it sufficient time. Maybe see a dermatologist if it's been more than 6 months after the loss of the hair.
Can't go wrong with vitamins either.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with vitamins.
Amber Rose, how can I find a doctor that accepts my insurance in California? Pretty much would be to call your insurance and they would give you a list of doctors in California that could accept your insurance. I'm sorry, we're in Texas, so we have no idea. Who was the one you mentioned?
Well,
Is there somebody in California?
Dr. Eric Sills is an expert in Essure removal. However, I'm not sure if what insurances he accepts, but he would be a contact person, Dr. Eric Sills out of California. Also, please contact Essure Problems Forum. They have a list of doctors that are in every state that do Essure removals, and so contact the Essure Problems Forum and see whether or not they can help you find a doctor in your particular state.
Shelby has a question. Have there been any studies after removal that show the symptoms from systemic issues getting better?
Well, not particular studies yet. I can tell you that in the network of gynecologists that are removing the Essure device, including myself, 80% of our patients start noticing reversal of systemic complications or symptoms within 3 weeks of the removal. The most dramatic ones happen to be cognitive changes or problems with memory, where these patients, once the Essure device is removed, 80 to 90% of those patients start noticing complete reversal of symptoms within just a few days to a few weeks of the removal.
Next question is it's not about the Essure, but it is a question from Noemi Taboya. Sorry if you can hear my stomach growling. Do you recommend the HPV vaccine and up to what age range?
The HPV vaccine, there are different types of vaccines. One of the most popular is actually a 4-valent, so it covers 4 different types of HPV. It is recommended in children as young as 9 years old, and up until the 20s. I happen to take a pass on HPV vaccines. My children are in the age group that they can receive them. They are intelligent enough and mature enough to have made the decision themselves. But had they asked me, I would not have recommended the HPV vaccine, because I happen to believe that you're exposed to HPV, and once you become sexually active, 60 to 80% of people are HPV positive sometime in their sexual during their sexual lifetime, and therefore I take a pass on HPV vaccines. And there's also a group of people that are concerned about the potential side effects and dramatic complications related to the vaccines.
I'm going to show everyone my stomach because I want to see my belly real quick. I've had a few of those come in. Let me I don't know where I can put this so it doesn't fall. I'll just leave it hanging. Right here. So there it is. It's growing. It's half food baby, half...
It's 90% food baby and 10% Richard. She's 13 weeks now.
Yeah.
And she's doing very well. We do ultrasounds almost every day. And by the way, you can do ultrasounds every day. It doesn't harm the baby. Ultrasound waves do not harm babies. X-rays, of course, do, but we have the privilege of being able to do ultrasounds every day. And of course, she has her own Doppler, so she can listen to the baby's heartbeat every night.
Okay, so this is kind of a long question, but I'm going to read it out to you by James Jessica Brady. My wife hasn't been able to see an OBGYN because they say Essure is not the problem. Doctor told her it was plastic, not metal. Due to her severe metal allergy, was in surgery when wife was having it put in. I noticed he put 3 long coils in her right tube, 2 long coils in her right tube. We don't have insurance, but with metal allergy and anemia, low iron, she bleeds every day. If not heavy, it's light, but it's been about 4 years since July.
This is exactly what we're talking about with the complications of Essure. And take this as an absolute take-home message for everybody. And if there's any doctors out there actually listening, especially the ER doctors, because they're the ones that are going to be hearing this from the patients. Even when the Essure device is perfectly placed, you're going to have women that suffer from chronic irregular bleeding. And you cannot manage the Essure device as a hormonal, based on a hormonal cause. Giving birth control pills, placing an IUD does not really control the bleeding. Ablation is relatively contraindicated with Essure, so it shouldn't be done. The best management for women that are suffering from problems with bleeding with the Essure is to take the device out. Now, as far as improper placement of Essure devices, yes, for a long time, doctors were being told that it was okay to place more than one coil in a fallopian tube. And so you might see that a doctor placed 2, and I've seen doctors place 3 coils in one side. You can't place more than 2. And if you're having trouble placing it, or you don't know if you did, you need to stop the procedure. But that didn't happen. So there are patients walking around with 3, 4, 5 coils inside of their body. And so the easiest thing that I can tell you is see if you can go to an urgent care center or somewhere through a university program that's willing to do an X-ray. If you do an X-ray, you'll be able to tell at least how many coils are in the body. And if you do manage to get insurance, there are, again, doctors that are willing to remove the Essure, especially if there's an incorrect number of Essure devices in the body or they're improperly placed in different parts of the body.
Okay, Monica. Good afternoon. After I had the Essure procedure, I have gained a lot of weight, 120 pounds after the procedure. Is that one of the side effects?
We've seen that, yes, it's one of the side effects, excessive weight gain. And the excessive weight gain has to do with part of that autoimmune response. And doctors dismiss that all the time. There's no way, quote unquote, there's no way that the Essure is causing you to gain 100 pounds. We have seen patients that once the Essure device is removed, they drop 10 pounds a month, and then within 6 months, they're back to normal weight. Doctors need to understand that the PET fibers of the Essure device was specifically created to cause an inflammatory response. That's what's causing the scarring. That inflammatory response is not just localized. It apparently is chronic and systemic, and therefore that one of the reactions to that is excessive weight gain, known as the E-belly. And most women will gain 30 pounds, but some women can gain over 100 pounds. And lo and behold, once we remove the device, these women are losing weight 10 pounds a month easy. And so if you're having problems like that, get a doctor that will explain it better than the doctor that's telling you it's not associated, the Essure is not associated with the weight gain. Also, the nickel in the Essure device, 17% of the world population is allergic to nickel. So when your doctor tells you that it's not a big deal, that it's nickel based, they don't know what they're talking about. We're running short on time now, so we wanted to.
The battery.
Yeah, we wanted to go ahead. I guess we're going to have to switch out from the mics to a general. We can do that. Do you want to answer any more questions?
Yeah, there's actually more questions.
So what we need to do is we need to come off the mics because we've run low on the battery on the phone. So
the video, are we going to restart it?
No, I'm just going to pull
okay. So it won't be as clear as you're hearing now. There might be a little echo, but you'll still hear us. And we're going to continue with the questions. We do have a few coming in, so we will try to get to everyone as quickly as possible.